Okay, welcome to week 7, second to last week of our class. So this week I'm going to go ahead and start with a question that I got last week, which was, the book of Maccabees said that the year of the temple rededication was 148, but I said that it was 164 BC, and why is there the difference? And the very basic difference is that they're using different calendars. Remember, this is before the time of a unified calendar system, so the Jews are following the Seleucid era calendar. The Seleucid era calendar was only during the Seleucid era, obviously, and it was broken into two parts, the Macedonian and the Babylonian. You can ask me why they broke it into two different sections, and I honestly cannot tell you. I tried to research it, and everybody just pretty much said they broke it up, and there's really no rhyme or reason which way you accepted it. But the Jews are actually going to follow the Babylonian system. Can you guys see, by the way? Do I need to turn it?
Yeah.
Okay, can you all still see over there? Okay. So the Jews are following the Babylonian Seleucid calendar. They're actually going to continue to use this calendar for all legal deeds and contracts up into the 1500s. So they actually follow this, and that's because the Talmud tells them that they have to uphold this practice. And it's not until the 1500s that one of the rabbis actually says, you know what, we can actually stop that practice now. So they actually move on to the Julian calendar, which is, again, not the calendar we use today. The dating of the 164 is where we're going to come in with our Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar that we use today. Now, I would like to point out that the Gregorian calendar came to be by Pope Gregory in 1582. But as you can see in the last note, even all of Europe does not accept this calendar until 1923. And so after Greece accepts the calendar in 1923, there's other smaller nations that are still keeping on accepting that calendar. So it's really not until pretty much, I think everybody in this room by this point was probably alive by the time that they actually unified the calendar system. And so today, it's very easy for us to get a little confused when we talk about which calendar we're using and what era we were talking about, because we all are just used to everybody using the same calendar. But that was not the case at all. Now, the Gregorian calendar came about from the Julian calendar, and there is still the Julian calendar that you can follow today. So if you ever want to go back in time, just tell people that you're going to follow the Julian calendar, and it kicks you back about 2 weeks. So if you ever wish that, if you're ever late on a deadline at work, feel free to use that. Let me know how it works out for you before I try it. Okay, so that is where we are. Now, I would like to point out this, that the Gregorian calendar actually changes the days from the 365.25, which was the Julian calendar, to the 365.2425 to get to the leap year. And for all of those people who say that I have way too much time on my hands, I would like to point out that I did not develop my own calendar and come up with this type of mathematical system. So, all right, so that was our one question for this week. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Oh no, I forgot. I wanted to talk to you guys too about the Jewish calendar, because there is a separate Hebrew calendar that they still use today as well. And this is for Jewish festivals, and this is actually the kind of like the religious calendar in Israel. So it's actually an adopted calendar in Israel. So this calendar actually follows all the requirements of the law to make sure that all of their festivals line up solarly where they're supposed to be. And so this is kind of a confusing calendar, but I actually like it at the same time. There are 12 months, and the months are either going to be 29 or 30 days. So if you have an odd month, thinking like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, those months are going to have 30 days. If it's an even month, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc., it's going to be 30 days. Now, as you can see, the years have a wide variety of span in terms of how many days there can be in a year. Most years have 354 days, but they can actually have up to 385 days. And that is because the way that it works is you have to line up your calendar based upon your high holy days. And so years have to be a day shorter or a day longer depending upon when Rosh Hashanah is going to fall. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, and it cannot fall on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. So if it's supposed to line up to add to be on one of those days of the week, you either have to add or subtract a day. So you're going to add a day to the 8th month or subtract it from the 9th month in order to get it to fall not on one of these days. 10 days later is when it's going to be Yom Kippur, which Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. It also has specific days that it has to fall on. So again, that is why our calendar has so many different ways that it can follow. The Jewish calendar does have a 13-month that it will add for leap years, and leap years happen about 7 times in 19 years. So it kind of evens out. But again, why you have to add this extra month is because you have to make sure that your Passover feast falls in the spring. So again, very interesting system. It's not a system that I follow. It's not a system that I try to really understand a whole lot other than to know the basic rules of it, how it all works. So if you're ever interested in your high Jewish holy days, you can line up your calendar based on that. So anyway, in the Jewish calendar, it's like 5,729 or something is what the year 2022 is. Anyway, and then here you go. Here, I wrote it out for you, and by wrote it out for you, I mean I totally copied these from the internet as well. And this is what those days and months look like. Remember last week we talked about Kislev, which is where our Hanukkah feast is going to follow, and Tishri is where I believe it was Yom Kippur follows. Not Rosh Hashanah. Sorry, so. Anyway.
What's with the 2 February, March?
Oh, yes. Okay, this is your leap month. Adar 2 is your leap month. So again, if you need to add that extra month to kick your Passover feast back to get it further back in the spring where it needs to go, that's the month that you're going to add. Again, that's what happens 7 times in 19 years. Yep, that's right. All right, so again, if you want to know more about that, feel free to ask me later because again, never underestimate the amount of random and semi-worthless information that I know. Okay, so today we're going to start talking about the Roman Republic, which is very similar to the Roman Empire, which we're going to get into as well. Our Roman Republic is actually going to start where we ended last week. So I just kind of want to review last week, but before we do that, this is what our Roman Republic and Roman Empire map look like. The Roman Empire does not actually kick in until we have our Triumvirate. Remember last week we talked about Pompeii. When our Triumvirate falls apart and Julius Caesar becomes dictator, it's going to move from a republic to an empire. This is what our map looks like. So this actually is going to go back to 218 BC, but you can see the expansion. By the time we get up to AD 115 to 117, you can see that they pretty much have most of Europe and a good section of Asia and some of Africa as well that they have conquered. Now this map actually is not going to be the end of the Roman Empire because the Roman Empire doesn't end until about 379. So this is just where they were up to this time. But this was, I thought, the best map that I could find. So anyway, I just wanted you to see last empire that we had really pretty much just covered from our Greco-Roman world, our Greek world this way. But now we're really going to start expanding west too. And so the Roman Empire really does kind of just start taking over the world in terms of the way that they conquer people. So they really grow to expand, and that's why we're also super familiar with the Roman Empire. But anyway, so starting with last week, where we left off, Rome actually transitions from a monarchy. Rome was a monarchy back in the day. So again, we're going back in time. When we were over here in Jerusalem doing our thing, Rome is over here. I mean, they are really starting to expand. They're doing what they need to do. Rome, we know, has a Jewish colony. We do not know the size or the extent of the Jewish colony, but we do know that there are Jews in Rome. Most of them came from the first diaspora when the Babylonian Empire split up. Some of them made their way that far west. So that is where we typically believe that our Jewish group came from. So remember last week we talked about in Jerusalem at this time we have 2 brothers, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, who are going head to head in this civil war. And when they're going head to head in this civil war, one of them really likes the Pharisees, one of them really likes the Sadducees, and that's what's going to start creating our big conflict. So Hyrcanus and his mom are the ones that really like the Pharisees. And they exalt the Pharisees into the positions of authority that's going to give them space and room in the Sanhedrin, to the point that they're actually going to kind of take over the Sanhedrin from the Sadducees in terms of prominence. But again, like everything else, his mom's going to die. His mom is the reigning queen of the Jewish people, the Hasmonean people. So when this happens, Hyrcanus is supposed to be, he is the high priest. His brother's going to come in, and his brother's going to fight him for kingship and for the high priesthood. So now we have Aristobulus, who's going to be in charge of both the kingship and the priesthood, and he is a fan of the Sadducees. So now we've shifted from a Pharisee group to a Sadducee group. And this would have typically been okay, because Hyrcanus, history tells us he was a very passive person. He didn't really care if he was in charge or not. But he gets spurred on by this person named Antipater. Antipater is Herod's dad. So this is where Herod's family is going to start rising to prominence. Now, his dad was the governor of the Idumean people. Remember last week we talked about when the Hasmonean people decided to expand and they forced the Idumeans into becoming Jews. So this is where they are. Antipater has been forced, his family has been forced to become Jewish. He decides that he's going to start kind of stirring the pot. He honestly doesn't really care who's in charge, but he just likes this idea of conflict. So he decides to tell Antipater that he needs to go ahead and ask for help from this other kingdom. So this other kingdom, the Nabatean people, they're going to come in. They are not warring people. So why you would go to a group of people that is not skilled in war and ask them to come and help you fight a war is beyond me. But hey, whatever, I didn't live during this time, and that's probably a very, very good thing. Anyway, so they come in, they're going to help them fight for 8 months, and after 8 months, they've made no progress. So at this point, we know that the people, remember most of our people are Pharisees. They align themselves with Pharisees because Pharisees are very common people. The Pharisees want Hyrcanus to be in charge. That's our common people. They want Hyrcanus to be in charge because they like that Pharisee belief. All the priests, though, like Aristobulus because they want the Sadducees to be in control. So again, we're just going to keep fighting this battle. So then, because things don't get complicated enough, both sides are going to appeal to Rome for assistance. And this is where things really start to get bad. At first, Pompey, who's our warring general, who is in this area already fighting battles for Rome, he gets these appeals, and so he sends one of his officials to go and check it out. So the official goes, both sides offer him bribes. He gets a bigger bribe from Aristobulus because he's richer. He's a Sadducee. He feels like he's going to get more wealth, and also because the Nabatean people, remember, are not a warring people, so they're easier to fight. But essentially, all they have to do is go to the Nabatean people and say, hey, if you don't leave, you're going to become an enemy of Rome. And the Nabatean people just say, oh, we don't want that, let's leave. Now, the Nabatean people, even though they're not good warriors, they're really the only people who are smart in this, because they're the only people who realize going up against the Roman Empire, going up against people who are literally going to start conquering the world, not a good idea. They're the only ones who are smart. So they leave, and then Aristobulus is going to get an army together, and he's going to fight, and he's going to still remain in charge. So again, we're still going to have our Sadducees in charge. Our Pharisees are not happy with this. So what happens now is both of these areas are going to go, and they're going to appeal to Pompey directly. So think about Paul. Remember how Paul eventually, he even appeals to Caesar, like he gets his one appeal, and then that's not good enough, so he's going to appeal to Caesar. That's exactly what they're doing. Because at this point, we have a triumvirate in charge of Rome. The Roman Republic is run by 3 different people, and Pompey is one of them. But again, Pompey is the one in this area. So Pompey has ambassadors from both sides come to him, and he hears both of their cases. And he decides that what he's going to do is he's going to take some time and make a decision. He actually starts critiquing Aristobulus because Aristobulus should not have ever tried to take the kingdom away from his brother. He should not have been so violent in what he was doing. So he reprimands Aristobulus, but he also knows that the priests are on Aristobulus' side, wealth is on Aristobulus' side. So he says, I'm just going to take some time and think about it, but I need to go and deal with the Nabatean people first. And essentially, even though the Nabatean people made the wise decision on not becoming enemies of the Roman Republic, they're still going to be conquered by the Roman people. But that's not really that weird because Rome is literally conquering everyone. So when this happens, Pompey tells them very specifically, he tells the ambassadors that Aristobulus and Hyrcanus have to stay there. They cannot go anywhere because he's going to make his decision and he's going to come back and tell them. But Aristobulus decides he doesn't need to do that, and so he leaves. Again, why you think that this is a good idea is beyond me. But this makes Pompey very mad. Pompey has the Roman Republic behind him, so Pompey decides, hey, I'm going to follow you. So he goes and he hunts him down, and Aristobulus at this point realizes when Pompey finds him, that was a really bad idea. So finally he's catching on to this being a bad idea, so he decides that he's just going to give Jerusalem over to Pompey. He promises him that if he comes, he's going to give him a ton of money to make as his tribute for his life, and also he's going to just give him the city of Jerusalem. So Pompey, okay, that's fine. He comes to collect, and they refuse to let him in. His soldiers are at the gates, and they will not open the gates for Pompey and for his group of people. Well, this is going to make everybody mad, and Aristobulus and his group, they retreat to the temple, and the Pharisees, who already hate Aristobulus and his people, they decide, why not? We're going to open the gates. So they open the gates to the Roman people. The Roman people, including Pompey, are going to come in. They're going to start fighting all of the people. This is where we have the Pharisees going directly into the temple and killing the Sadducees in the temple. Now that does not happen immediately because they decide, and by they, Pompey and his people decide that they're going to fight the citizens of the city first. And so when this happens, that gives them some time to go, and they're going to get some of those ramming rods, and they're eventually just going to ram their way into the temple. Because the Jewish people, even though they hated the Sadducees, the Pharisees even weren't going to let Pompey into the temple because that's desecrating something they had literally just rededicated. But anyway, Pompey's going to fight his way. Battering rams, that's what they're called. Battering rammed. He's going to battering ram his way into the temple. And when he does that, he is actually going to make his way into the Holy of Holies. And there's several sources that say that he's really upset because when he gets to the Holy of Holies, there's nothing there. And he's expecting there to literally be a God in the Holy of Holies, not the presence of God. He really believes that there is going to be a person there, so he gets very upset by this. But one thing that Pompey does have going for him is that he doesn't touch anything when he goes into the temple. He doesn't let his soldiers touch anything because he does respect the Jewish religion. So because of this, as soon as they do withdraw from the temple, he actually orders priests to go in and purify it because he recognizes that he has defiled the temple by his presence. So he does allow them to at least do that. And because we have nothing being desecrated in terms of being touched by somebody who shouldn't have been touched and all of that, it's actually pretty easy. They can just go in and purify it, and we don't have to do that whole rededication where we're going to have a whole new rededication thing. Pompey is actually going to take a whole bunch of Jewish people with him, and he's going to go back to Rome. And when he takes these Jewish people back to Rome, that's why we know that there's already a Jewish colony in Rome, because they really expand this group of Jewish people in Rome. They do come as slaves, but almost all of them are freed immediately upon coming to Rome. But we know through our New Testament, many of them stay slaves, and they are descendants of slaves, and we see that in multiple references throughout the New Testament. So I did want to point out that Pompey, actually, the way he got his military prominence is that he is known in history for ridding the Mediterranean from pirates. I just thought that was interesting. It kind of made me think of like Hook, Captain Hook, even though that's not at all what they are.
Is that a real depiction of what he looked like?
Yeah, this is Pompey. He's not nearly as shiny as the other people, but this is Pompey. This is what he looks like. Okay, so I totally just summarized the entire Roman Republic super fast. And so what questions do you have? Yes.
Is there any ark when he goes into?
Yeah, it's there. Yes. The Ark of the Covenant is in the Holy of Holies. Yes, and all of the stuff that should be in the Holy of Holies is there.
So the candelabra.
Yes, the candelabras, all of that stuff, it is there. That's what he also does not allow anybody to touch. But again, it's just that physical manifestation that he's expecting to be in the Holy of Holies. And he's just a little disappointed, but not disappointed enough that he feels the need to desecrate anything, which I think speaks highly of his character, to be honest. Because keep in mind that Rome is a polytheistic religion. What?
She thought that was a candle.
Oh, no, it's not. It's just my water bottle. Not drinking wax, don't worry. Yeah, totally don't even remember what I was saying. That's okay. All right, so Rome now has control over Jerusalem. And at this point, our Hasmonean people are going to be completely gone in terms of having any type of power. They're still going to be there because they don't kill everybody. Now, these wars are very, very detrimental to the Jewish people. And in fact, this first war with Pompey, they say killed about 12,000 people, 12,000 Jewish people in the first day. Also, because I keep forgetting to mention this, the animals of war at this time, please keep in mind that they are elephants. So all of these wars that are taking place, like I think it's really easy for us to just think of like cavalry coming in on horses, but that's not at all the case. They have elephants. And in fact, in the book of Maccabees, there's a story about one guy who goes up because he thinks that he's going to kill this guy that's like high importance, and he has the biggest elephant with the biggest like basket thing on top of it. So he goes and he runs up beneath the elephant and he disembowels the elephant, and the elephant falls on top of him and crushes him. And then it turns out it wasn't even the guy he was trying to kill. But hey, it's a good story just the same. Except for the elephant. It's not
So
fair.
where did they get the elephants from? Were there elephants in that region at that time, or did they just bring them up from Africa?
Well, they would bring them up from Africa. They can also bring them over from India.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, yeah.
I thought they were always on horses.
No, you would think. You absolutely would think. And horses do come in later, like especially during our Roman time. You'll start seeing that that's where we kind of see that transition, because obviously horses are faster than elephants, but I mean, seriously. Elephants. Yes, very true. They cannot just pick up their foot and stomp on people. And remember, if we can get our elephants drunk, that's a great way to kill people. So.
But the focus is Jerusalem. I mean,
Yes.
are they conquering?
Who? Roman?
The Romans, they're coming in and their focus is Jerusalem. Are they also
Oh,
conquering
yes.
the
Oh,
outlying
no.
areas?
Yes. Rome comes in and they conquer everything. That's why Pompey's already in this area, is because Pompey has already been fighting his way there. So he's not that far away, but the Jewish people, again, they're kind of doing their own thing. They have their own kingdom. They're okay. So they weren't going to come in and fight them right away. But again, it's because they appeal to them.
And we're talking Judah, not Israel.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah, well, Rome's going to come in and conquer all of it. Yeah. Because if we go back to our map, Rome has all of it. I mean, so we see, like, we're over here. Rome has definitely spread its way. So it's not just going to be like one different little area that Rome is going to take. Rome is just working its way spot by spot and taking it over as it goes. And that's what we're going to see in just a minute. When the Roman Republic changes to the Roman Empire, that's when they're going to get down here and start invading Egypt, and that's where we're going to have Cleopatra come in. So does that help you? Yes. Okay. So yeah, this isn't just a one area that Rome is trying to fight. Rome is, literally fighting everything. Now, we're only focusing on the eastern battles. Obviously, the western battles, they have nothing to do with what we're talking about. So I don't really want to go into that, but we're just going to focus over here, where we were.
So this is kind of off that, but was the city of Pompeii named after Pompey?
Yes,
And
the city of Pompeii is named after
was
Pompey.
that
It's spelled
like
differently.
his area that he was?
It was, yeah. That would have been like his one city. You know, like we have Alexander who starts Alexandria. Pompey is Pompeii.
Well, then I guess maybe he got it, didn't you?
It's,
Mount Etna.
yes, yeah. My brother has a shirt that says, have you guys ever played that game, The Floor is Lava? Like, okay, well, there's this game called The Floor is Lava, and you can't touch the floor, and so you have to like hop from things to things. And my brother has this shirt that says, the floor is lava, said everyone in Pompeii. It's really not appropriate, but kind of one of those dark humor things. It made me laugh. Okay, so let's see. This is where we left off. Oh, okay, I wanted to point this out. Remember I showed you guys this painting or this picture a couple weeks ago? Okay, and we talked about how this was the Maccabees. I actually decided this week to do some more research into this painting, or not painting, I'm going to keep calling it that, but this art. This is actually supposed to be a depiction of when the Romans came in and left the temple. So this is not supposed to be the Maccabees, but there are two different explanations of what this is supposed to be, but the original intent was that it was supposed to be the Romans. So, yeah. All right, and then we're going to have the fall of the Triumvirates. So remember, the Triumvirate has three people in charge of it. We have Crassus, that's his name, Crassus, Julius Caesar, and Pompey. So those are our three people. Crassus is going to die in battle. So as soon as he dies, the triumvirate actually ends. About 3 days before that, though, Caesar's daughter, who's married to Pompey, dies in childbirth. And he decides that since his daughter is no longer alive and she's no longer in this relationship with Pompey, he doesn't need to be in a relationship with Pompey either. And so he decides that he's going to fight Pompey for total control. And so when this happens, Pompey actually is going to appeal to Egypt, to the Ptolemies in Egypt, for help. So Cleopatra and her brother, her older brother that she's married to, husband number one, who is her older brother, they are actually engaged in a civil war too. Because at this time, everybody's in a civil war. I mean, like, if you aren't in a civil war, you're just not cool, I think. So Cleopatra and her brother, even though they're in a civil war, they decide that they're going to help. So they actually send troops and they send ships up to help Pompey. It's not really going to work because Pompey is going to die and Caesar is going to become the dictator. He's going to change Rome from a republic to an empire. And Caesar then actually goes and appeals to the Ptolemies, asks them to leave, and asks them to try to work things out. Now, when this happens, both Cleopatra and her brother are going to go to Caesar. Cleopatra initially only sends people, like her delegates, to Caesar. But she finds out that Caesar is very good at seducing other female rulers. And so when this happens, she decides to go and appeal to him directly. So she wants his help now in trying to conquer her brother. And so what we're going to see happen is that Cleopatra, using her feminine wiles, is going to win this. And she's going to win it because she's becoming Caesar's mistress. She ends up having his baby. So she wins. Her older brother is then killed off. But then, much to her surprise, Caesar decides to marry her off to her younger brother. And so then we have even more weirdness going on. But her younger brother's like 10 years younger than she is. So she really does just kind of get to control him. And eventually he's going to die. He dies at like 14. I think he was 11 when they got married. He dies at 14. So, yeah. Now, I would like to point out that after the first week when I talked about Cleopatra and I talked about how she married her two brothers, my my brother called me and said, but you forgot to mention that Cleopatra was the 4th generation of people who were married to their siblings. And I told him, well, yeah, I mean, I know that, but that doesn't make it any less weird. I mean, it really does not change the fact that this is not super weird. So anyway, this is where we're going to really start seeing things are going to get a little crazy. So we have Alexandria at this time. Cleopatra is going to be completely in charge of the Ptolemy Empire because her brother has died. Cleopatra and Caesar kind of, well, they're very close, obviously. No need to explain that. Alexandria is a huge city of great importance, which we've talked about previously. Rome is a city of importance in the Roman Empire. And so there's a lot of Jews going back and forth because both of these cities are very similar in terms of the way that they treat the Jews at the time. They are both very well-established cities that have great trade. So they're going to go back and forth. Caesar ends up getting murdered. And if you don't know anything about the murder of Caesar and A2 Brute and the Ides of March and all of that, you should read up on it. We're not going to go into it a great deal, but Caesar's murdered, and then we're going to have Antony and Cleopatra are going to take over. Now remember, Antony and Cleopatra have 3 children together too. So this is really like our first major love triangle of this time period where we're just going to see a lot of people who get murdered because they all love each other and craziness is going to happen. So Cleopatra, when this happens, Antony and Octavian both become successors of the Roman Empire because Caesar dies without a good successor. So there's 2 people, they're both going to come into power, Octavian and Antony. Antony and Cleopatra decide that together they're going to fight Octavian, and they lose. And this is where we have Antony and Cleopatra and our great suicide, where Antony commits suicide, and then it's, in history, Cleopatra locks herself in a room with an asp, a snake, who actually is going to bite her, and then she's going to die. So they both commit suicide because they're that much in love with each other and can't live without each other, and again, great times. Octavian is going to change his name to Caesar Augustus, and this is going to be our first Caesar in the New Testament. So a lot of people get confused because obviously when we think of Caesar, we think of Julius Caesar because that's just where our minds go. Caesar Augustus, who's Octavian, is going to be our first Caesar of the New Testament. And a little bit before that, the Roman Senate has appointed Herod to be the king of the Jews. So he actually rules the Judean area. Remember, he is an Idumean. He is going to reign until 4 BC, and this is why we believe that Jesus was born about 5 to 6 BC, because we know through our Bible that Herod has killed all the babies, and Jesus was already born, so Jesus is believed to have been born about 5 to 6 BC. Keep in mind that Herod, because he does have that Jewish traditional idea at least, he is married to a descendant of Judas Maccabeus. So we do see that traditional Jewish line being followed all the way to Herod. So this is where our Roman Empire is going to actually end off in our time between the Testaments, because now we're caught up to the point where Jesus is born, which means we're no longer in between our time between the Testaments. We made it. Thanks. So this is where we are. Now, one of the things that this is what we think of Cleopatra looks like. Okay, right? This is what everybody on TV tells us that Cleopatra should look like. This is actually a rendering of her right after she died. Remember I told you she had red hair and a really big nose? This is what she's actually, this is actually a good representation of what she's supposed to look like. So, not that Egyptian princess. All right, and then I think, this is where I was trying to go. The Romans do not undo Hellenism. The Romans decide that because Hellenism is so prominent at this time, Hellenism is not really on their list of things that they feel like they need to conquer, because obviously they're busy conquering the entire world. So they don't need to really worry about our ideas of the way that we look at the world. Remember, Rome and Greece actually have very similar religious ideas. They are both very polytheistic societies. They have very similar gods, that just essentially their gods do the same things, but they have different names. And so there's no real reason to undo anything that's been done. And in fact, they're going to kind of use Hellenism to their advantage as we go later on. Having said that, 5 minutes, I got this. Okay, there is one group of Jewish people that we have not talked about yet, and I did not make a slide for it, the Zealots or the Zealots. We're not going to actually talk about them much other than what I'm about to tell you, because they don't actually come about until after Jesus is born. And so the main thing you need to know about them is that they hate Rome. They hate Rome. And so they are actually known to have daggers, and they go to the temple, and any type of Jewish sympathizer that actually sympathizes with Rome, they just kill, because they hate Rome that much. So that's their biggest thing that they do, is that they don't really hate the other groups so much as they do anybody who likes Rome. So if it's a Jewish person who is sympathizing with Rome in some way, then they just decide to kill them. That's one of the things okay, so you know when I study things, I tend to really get myself ingrained in them. And there was honestly a day that after I'd been reading about the Romans, somebody made me mad, and I was like, I think I should just poison them. And then it was like, no, Amy, that is not what you do. That's right. I told you Moses was 40 when he killed his first person, but my birthday is next week. So then I'll turn 41. Fingers crossed I can make it that far. All right, so the last thing that I actually want to talk about with the Romans is Roman history obviously is going to impact our view of Christianity. It's going to impact our view of the New Testament. And you need to remember that, because the Romans are going to be very prominent in terms of our political and our military leaders from this point forward. But one of the things that we need to see in our Roman history that really plays over into our New Testament time is the idea of the Roman inauguration of its leaders versus the crucifixion. And so there's a lot of parallels that can be drawn between these two, and I actually included 2 resources down here at the bottom. There's one of them that this is just not a podcast, what's it called? Like a blog or something you can read. The other one is a podcast. But as you can see, this is from the Nero. Nero is our 5th emperor of our Roman Empire. There are about 11 emperors between Caesar Augustus and the time that the New Testament is done, being written. So this is actually our 5th one, the inauguration of Nero, and this is how they do it. This is what history tells us to do. So the guard gathers, they're going to hail Caesar, they're going to give him a robe and a crown and all that stuff. They're going to parade him through town, they're going to offer a sacrifice, they're going to take him to the high priest. He's going to have one person on his right, one person on his left. He's proclaimed to be Lord and God, and then they're going to wait for a sign from the heavens. Now, when Nero is actually put in charge in his coronation, there's an eclipse that happens. Now, if you want to compare that, these are the steps that it has to happen in. This is what Roman history tells us. These are the steps. These are the steps of the crucifixion as told in Mark. Remember that Mark is the gospel that is written to the Romans. So as you can see, I put it as close as I could straight across. The Praetorian Guard gathers to hail Caesar as Lord and God. Mark tells us the soldiers take Jesus to the Praetorium. Then we have the royal robes, a wreath crown, and a scepter are placed on Caesar. Mark tells us that for Jesus, they dressed him in purple. They gave him a crown of thorns. They hailed him as the King of the Jews. So as you can see, as you work your way down, this is exactly the same thing. And so Roman history, the ideas, all of that stuff that's going on in Rome, it really does play over into our New Testament. And so this right here is going to be our biggest thing that's going to connect us to the Roman Empire. Now, like I said, we're going to have about 11 emperors. Some of them are really good. Some of them are really bad. Nero, our 5th one, hates Christians, completely hates Christians. Nero is the one in history that tells us that Paul and Peter were killed by Nero. But again, we're still going to have several emperors after that time. Maybe some that are more sympathetic to Christians, but that's when the New Testament is finalized. Yes, ma'am.
The Roman thing was the euangelion, is
Yes.
it right?
Yes.
Which is the word that we translate gospel. So the gospel of Jesus Christ was actually the proclamation of him as the new king,
Yeah.
according to Mark.
Yeah. That's good. I'm glad you included that. But again, if you guys are interested in learning more about that, this is a very interesting study. And so I highly recommend, both of these are on the thing. What is that called? Like if you scan it, the QR code. So you can get to both of those links if you want them. Okay. Now, next week, week 8, it's going to be the Apocrypha. So that's it. So we are caught up to where Jesus is. Next week, we're going to talk about the Apocrypha, and then we are going to be done. So.
Oh, I thought you said, well, then you're going to be tested.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Come prepared next week. Number 2 pencils, everybody. That's where the test is going to be.